Almost as if they were building those so that they could easily control the local population of Anglo-Saxons so that they could also kind of, genocide them. I'm not a fan of the Normans. Spoiler alert. Hey guys, today we'll be watching how to build the perfect castle by Epic History TV. Now the castle we see right here looks darn near perfect. On a high elevated plane, there's probably only one proper singular approach up to the castle. It's got farmland surrounding it, so there we go. Video's done. We know. Just do that. It depends on the castle we are talking about. Late medieval castle, Renaissance castle, early Motte-and-bailey castles, right? There's so many different types of castles. So, I'm going to guess... I mean, it's a 17-minute video, so we might be going over multiple types of castles, which is what I'm going to assume, because Epic History TV typically goes above and beyond what I assume. And so I'm thinking we'll get a rundown, kind of like the history of castles, their evolution, perhaps from fall of Roman times to the late medieval period castles. Obviously, we are going to be discussing European castles. We will not be doing Japanese or Asian fortresses. Maybe we will. Who knows? Maybe they'll mention it. Anyways, start watching.
In Europe's Middle Ages, castles dominated not just warfare, but society itself.
Yes.
Strongholds are as old as war, but the
okay, let's look at this castle. This looks like... It kind of looks like it had modern renovations done to it here. With those... No. I don't know, the windows look weird to me, but that could just be an Italian thing. But that roofing looks like it was fixed up more modern. Yeah, there were modern renovations done to it, I say.
medieval castle was unique.
It was.
A refuge and a projection of military force. A lordly residence.
Hamburg. That is a good looking castle. I look at that's a
and symbol of power. A center of justice and government.
Castle.
Today, castle ruins are found from the Atlantic coast to the hills of Syria. Dramatic and poignant reminders of a lost feudal world.
So jealous of you Europeans. You guys have castles. I have medieval times. That's about it. Oh man, I want to visit a castle.
There was no single blueprint for the castle. Every one was unique.
True, except they all followed typical templates, right? You had the outer wall, and typically you had the similar, there were similar designs and aspects of a castle that would be placed at similar spots. But obviously the shape of the castle would be determined by where it was being built.
But by analyzing key trends over 4 centuries, Epic History TV is proud to present its guide to building the perfect...
Hold up, are they going to give us a 3D render of their own castle? Because I know Shadiversity did this as well with his own. I watched that video, and that video was really good. By the way, you should watch that video if you haven't already. But I'm guessing probably most of you here, if you're a medieval fan, you watch Shadiversity, of course.
Castle.
A feudal world.
The medieval castle was the product of a feudal world.
Yes.
A world we'll explore with help from our video sponsor, Crusader Kings 3.
Which is a pretty good game, by the way.
Using the in-game map, we can zoom in on 9th century France, the birthplace of feudalism, This was a time when royal authority was in crisis, as Frankish kings, the heirs of Charlemagne, struggled to control unruly nobles and fight off Viking armies.
Charlemagne's realm didn't really have too many issues fighting off the Vikings. The Vikings typically left them alone because they had, more people. West England was the safer target, as well as the Mediterranean world, even though the Mediterranean was more for trade. England is primarily the spot where raiding would be occurring. Also kind of down along the Russian river, the Volga. Is the Volga the one that goes down from the Baltic all the way down into the Black Sea? Is that what it's called? I don't know river names. I only know 2 rivers: the Thames and all right, I only know one river name. But yeah, the Vikings did raid Francia a little bit, but not too often, because the Franks would develop a way to deal with them, and the Frankish king would also kind of he'd end up just paying them off because they had the money.
Increasingly, the king would grant a piece of land known as a fief and the promise of protection to a lord. The lord became the king's vassal, swearing an oath of loyalty or fealty and providing military service when required. These feudal lords began to build fortified bases across the land, in which to live and from which to impose their authority on their new domains. These were the first medieval castles. If you'd like to experience the challenge of feudal lordship for yourself, we can recommend Crusader Kings 3, a new game from Paradox and our video sponsor. It's set in a richly detailed medieval world in which your task is to guide your chosen dynasty to culture and their own history. All have strengths.
I've already played through an entire campaign. Because I have no life. I'm a historian. I'm a history guy. It's about the only game I'm playing right now. Forts are either fortified by nature or by human hand, or by both. Which is considered stronger? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
When building a new castle, the first and most important consideration is location.
Yes.
A castle should dominate the landscape, with good views in all directions, so hills are ideal.
True.
Steep slopes and river bends can be used
Are they really gonna design their own castle in a virtual thing? That's cool.
That approach routes,
that's what I want.
making the site easier to defend. And for building work, a local source of stone, wood and soil is essential, as transporting these materials over medieval roads is more expensive than the materials themselves.
Yes.
There must also be a secure local source of fresh water and food to sustain.
Yes, Epic History TV. Thank you. Something that so many, mainly TV shows, books, fantasy books, at least the more modern ones, typically are remembering to include farms outside of their castle walls. Movies and shows don't show farms most of the time, and it's infuriating. How do you expect to feed population living inside those castle walls if you don't got farms? Huh?
The castle's occupants. A reliable starter castle is the Motte-and-bailey, popular with the Normans, who built hundreds across England and Wales during the Norman conquest.
Almost as if they were building those so that they could easily control the local population of Anglo-Saxons, so that they could also kind of, genocide them. I'm not a fan of the Normans. Spoiler alert.
The motte is a mound, either natural or built by hand, as seen here in the biotapestry.
Look at that dude's face. Look at that dude's face. Their faces. I love old English art.
It's not just a pile of mud, though. These coloured bands are thought to represent alternating layers of stone and clay, which will increase stability. Sometimes they even used stone or timber foundations. A typical motte is 8 meters high and up to 50 meters across. Its top can be defended by a simple wooden palisade and a tower, living quarters for the lord and his entourage, and last refuge in case of attack.
If you've ever played Medieval 2 Total War, you would probably be familiar with the Motte-and-bailey castle, because if you attacked a town, a lot of castles in the early game were Motte-and-bailey, right? And from what I remember, it's been a few years since I've played the game. From what I remember, those castles were pretty well designed, at least the Motte-and-baileys. I don't know about the later medieval castles that were in the game, but at the very least, the Motte-and-bailey castles were well designed. Sadly, you never got to, fight up in the tower. You were kind of restricted. Your soldiers, you only fought I remember the castle's capture point, I think it was right at the bottom of the bridge that led up to the Last Stand tower. They made a Medieval 3. Let me fight up here in the tower.
An earth ditch and palisade should enclose the bailey to protect important buildings such as a hall, stables, kitchen, stores, and a forge.
Yes. The early castles, that was not where the majority of the population lived. Remember, this is human society was mainly agricultural up until the late 1800s. So at this point in time, most of the lord's people would be living in surrounding villages and working the farms surrounding the castle. People living here would be very, very few. It'd be the stable master and the stable hands, the cook and the cook's assistants, the servants, and the blacksmith and his family. That would essentially be all that live inside here. Now, as time progressed, where castles grew larger, that would change, as there'd be guilds and stuff. There'd be more businesses working inside of castles, but they would not be really population centers. I think I explained that well enough.
Timber palisades.
Reminder, I am not a castle historian. I am late 800s political English kind of historian. Courtly things. Not castles, not military.
Are vulnerable to fire
I'm going to
and
probably
rot,
get things like this wrong.
so will ideally be replaced by an enclosing stone wall, known as a curtain wall,
Oh, we're
as soon as
advancing.
possible. This creates the enceinte, or main defensive enclosure. A curtain wall should have crenellations to protect soldiers of the garrison during an attack, as they shoot their bows or crossbows at the enemy.
I'm going to get
A concealed
matriculations.
postern gate, or sally port, can
Yes!
be used during a
They've
siege
included it.
to smuggle messages in and out of the castle, or to launch surprise attacks on the enemy.
Another thing that gets overlooked is this postern gate. Yes. But also this postern gate is a little bit, I think, more open than what would really be in a castle. I think most castles would hide these a whole lot better. It'd be very well hidden, kind of thing, because you don't want the enemy to find your gate and then sneak in, even though you would put guards around it. And guards a small amount of people can defend a small narrow corridor like would be in the postern gate, but still, you don't want to divert resources, so you want to keep that as hidden as possible so you don't have to worry too much about it. Within the fortress are to be one principal tower, built in the stoutest manner and fortified as strongly as possible. Okay.
In parts of France, such as Anjou and Poitou, castle builders ignored the Motte-and-bailey approach and constructed strong stone towers. In French, it's called a donjon.
That is an intimidating castle. Whew. That tower there. It's got matriculations. For my Shad fans, you know what I want to do. For anyone that's a fan of Shadiversity, you know what I'm tempted to say. But I'm
The origin of the word dungeon. In England, it's known as the keep. A keep offers better security and accommodation than a wooden tower.
Yes.
But if you try to build one on top of a motte,
does.
its weight will cause it to collapse. Some opt for a compromise, a shell keep, which keeps the motte and replaces its wooden palisade with a circular stone wall. But a truly imposing keep will have to be built from scratch on carefully prepared foundations. A typical early stone keep is rectangular, between 2 and 4 stories high, with walls up to 6 meters thick. Construction might take up to 10 years and cost a fortune, so large keeps are only built by monarchs and powerful nobles.
Yes.
The biggest keep...
I like that distinction. Because a lot of the time, especially, again, kind of ripping on TV shows and stuff, only the wealthy could really have completely stone, like, castles like this. But they kind of, you know, it's something that I really like if you've read George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire books. He makes distinctions about the wealth level of certain lords. There will be lords that literally only have a circular wooden, like they literally only have like a Motte-and-bailey. And then there are other lords, like you have the Starks, the Lannisters. So you have the lords, the big, powerful, and wealthy lords that have ruled for ever, essentially. And they have huge castles, right? And then the powerful vassals of them have significant sized castles, but still are smaller than the head lord. Like let's talk about the north, the Starks. The Starks have Winterfell before it was burned down. Spoiler alert for book like 2 or something. Book 3? No, I think it's book 2. And then the Boltons have the Dreadfort. The Dreadfort is if you've read the books, you know it is a formidable castle. But compared to Winterfell, it is nothing, really. And that's, you know, that distinction is pretty important because it also adds depth to the world. It shows you like they're even nobles, even though they lived tax-free, they didn't always have money. And it's something that really adds to the history. I mean, obviously they still had an easy life compared to the peasants, but you know, I feel like there's sometimes, especially with fantasy TV shows or historical dramatic TV shows, there's a myth, I guess, around nobility and what their life was like. But, you know, the addition of, hey, nobility castles were wide-ranging in size and structure based upon the wealth and influence of that noble. Anyways, enough of the rant.
Keeps have towers at each corner. Within, there might be a hall for meals and entertainment, private apartments, a chapel, and store.
Yes. Religion, specifically Catholicism, or well, Christianity, because there was just Christianity and Orthodox at this time. Well, there was Catharism and Waldensian, but those were super minor. It is essentially Christianity and Orthodox were your two choices, and Western Europe was Christian. So, church, yes, very important. I mean, yes, there would be churches in Orthodox realms as well, but we're talking about Western Europe. Churches pretty much everywhere.
Rooms. A forebuilding creates an impressive and well-guarded entrance, which should be at first floor level, accessed by a wooden staircase, which can be removed in case of attack. If the keep has a cellar, this is an ideal space to store extra provisions, not for chaining up prisoners in the dungeons of popular imagination.
True. Rochester.
Early keeps are square or rectangular, but later come in many shapes and sizes.
Specifically from the French.
King Philippe Augustus of France was particularly fond of circular keeps. Perhaps the most eye-catching of all is Castel del Monte in southern Italy, built by Emperor Frederick II. Its elaborate polygonal structure reminds us that the perfect castle must be elegant as well as formidable.
Yeah. Towers are to project forward so that when the enemy approaches them, yes, the towers would be positioned out of the walls.
The curtain wall should be strengthened by flanking towers at regular intervals.
Yes. Beautiful.
These project forward from the wall, so archers can shoot at attacking enemies with enfilade fire. Or, put another way, attackers will come under fire from the wall ahead of them, as well as from towers to the right and left. Square towers offer large amounts of extra space for living quarters and storage. But their corners are a weak point that can be targeted by enemy stone-throwing artillery, such as a trebuchet.
Trebuchets were rare though, because they were massive. These things were huge, and they took a lot of time to build.
So round towers may be a better option.
Personally, I think round towers look better than square.
The choice is often one of taste, fashion, and/or cost.
Yeah.
Square towers, round towers, and D-shaped towers were all common across Europe, and many castles feature a mix of types.
Pevensey.
In some places, it was possible to cut costs by reusing old Roman fortifications, as at Pevensey and Portchester.
A lot of castles. Now I think a good amount may be lost to time, possibly. Were all just destroyed over time through wars. But a lot of castles would be built. Like, honestly, a lot of local lords that would rise up in England would use old Roman forts as their base of power, because, you know, hey, it's a the fortifications were pretty destroyed, but still a fortification that can be used for your advantage, because there are some walls there, right?
On England's south coast. Here, the Normans simply built a stone keep within the walls of an old Roman shore fort, saving time, labor, and money. Loopholes, or arrow slits, are important additions for any tower or wall section. The earliest versions are simple vertical slits, but from the 14th century, more decorative cross shapes are common. In the event of a siege, wooden hoardings, sometimes called brattice work, can be built out over the walls to allow the garrison to rain boiling water and rocks onto the attacking enemy.
Portcullis, okay.
The obvious focus for an attack is the castle's main gate, so its defences, known as the gatehouse, must be especially strong. The ideal solution is to add towers on each side of the gateway, to add an outer and inner gate, and at least one, if not several, portcullises. These metal lattice gates can be dropped vertically to trap attackers in a kill zone. The garrison can then use murder holes in the ceiling and walls to finish off the intruders. The main gate can be further protected by a drawbridge over the outer moat or ditch, which can be raised by chains as an enemy approaches. Through the Middle Ages, gatehouses became increasingly powerful, with multiple drawbridges, gates, and portcullises. The approach...
You'd be pretty stupid to attack a gatehouse head-on. Yeah. Kind of why castles ultimately wouldn't really even be assaulted that much in medieval times, because they were so formidable. They were, you'd probably like starve the enemy out, or obviously do what you can to destroy the walls. You wouldn't really assault the castle until you destroyed a significant portion of their defense. Right?
Covered by looming towers, and every wall and ceiling studded with loopholes and murder holes.
Where are the manipulations?
Some of the most formidable gatehouses are found in the castles built by Edward I to subdue Wales in the late 13th century. Such imposing wall defences began to make a massive keep seem superfluous, so many of these castles were built without a keep at all.
Didn't know that.
Our castle is now an imposing fortress, able to withstand a siege of several months, if properly provisioned. But to be considered truly epic, a castle should have a second curtain wall, enclosing an outer bailey, with its own towers and gatehouse. Gatehouses should be positioned at angles to the approach route, so any attacker has to twist and turn, rather than make a direct rush at the gate. Towers and walls should now feature stone machicolations for dropping rocks on the enemy, far more sophisticated than temporary wooden hoardings. The new outer bailey, or ward, allows more buildings to be brought within the castle's defences, not forgetting that a medieval castle is as much a residence as fortification. Perhaps a new, grander hall for entertaining your household and important guests, kitchen gardens, and extra living quarters. The outer ditch or moat can be flooded with water to create an extra layer of defence. A water moat also has decorative value and can be a source of fresh fish.
True.
A final flourish, a barbican, an outlying fortification that adds yet another layer of defence to the main entrance. This is now a fine and formidable example of a concentric castle. Its design will force any attacker to overcome successive layers of strong defence to reach the final refuge, the keep. If properly garrisoned and supplied, a castle like this was virtually impregnable until the age of gunpowder.
Good-looking castle. Good-looking.
As we have seen, there was no single blueprint for the medieval castle. Each was built to take advantage of the landscape, to incorporate the latest military thinking, and reflect regional styles and personal taste. The most awe-inspiring examples from the castle's golden age include Crac des Chevaliers, the supposedly impregnable crusader fortress of the Knights Hospitaller. Dover Castle.
I've always pronounced it Hospitaller. Is it Hospitaller? I mean, I guess that's probably the British way of pronouncing it. And I'm American.
Known as the Key to England. And Malbork Castle, the gigantic brick-built headquarters of the Teutonic Knights.
That is a big castle.
By the 15th century, the castle's role was in steep decline, in part due to the rise of gunpowder weapons, such as cannon.
Hit a tear every time.
But more fundamentally because the feudal world that gave rise to the castle had fallen away, to be replaced by professionalized armies and centralized royal authority. As the age of powerful feudal lords ended, so too did the age of the castle. Most would ultimately slide into ruin, their military role replaced by artillery forts, their residential role taken over by palaces and stately homes, as the age of the castle gave way to the age of the chateau.
The age of the castle is better than the age of the chateau. Fight me.
Thanks again.
All right, that is. Let's just. I don't look at a castle. There we go. That'll be the in here. Pretty good video. Kind of was not expecting, honestly, for them to actually, build their own castle. I thought they were just going to show pictures of various castles and be like, this is what went into building a castle, right? Did not actually expect them to do a 3D model of their own castle that they designed themselves. I thought that's pretty neat. Obviously, Shadiversity has done it before, and I highly recommend checking out that video of his. But yeah, not as obviously. If you watch Shadiversity's video, he went extremely into detail about the reasoning behind where he placed certain buildings and stuff in the walls of his fortification of his castle. They didn't do that for this video, but this video was only 15-16 minutes on building a castle, so it's fine. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I wish I could build a castle. That's what I would do if I had if I was like a billionaire. I'd just build a shit ton of castles. But yeah, that's gonna do it for today. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thank you.